In the final hours before an execution, a world hidden from the public comes alive. Steel doors unlock. Witnesses gather. A condemned prisoner faces choices no human should have to make. And as the clock counts down, every minute is documented, controlled, and irreversible. Before we begin, tap subscribe if you want more deep, factual stories from inside America's most secretive prisons, because today, we're stepping into the last place a person ever stands, death row's final corridor. The final 24 hours before an execution are unlike any other period in the American criminal justice system. Decades of appeals, motions, last-minute filings, and political interventions suddenly fall away. What remains is a rigid and unmistakably procedural countdown, designed to eliminate uncertainty and ensure that nothing, no mistake, no oversight, no delay interrupts what the state has decided must occur. The moment a death warrant is signed, the machinery begins. Prison staff receive formal notice, which triggers a chain of preparations that unfold quietly behind walls built to keep everything invisible. Yet this invisibility hides a system so structured, so choreographed, that even a deviation of a few minutes is logged, reported, and sometimes investigated. Inside the prison, the condemned person is informed of the signed warrant. This notification is not dramatic. It is not shouted, nor delivered with ceremony. It is typically spoken through the bars or across a table by administrators who have done this more times than they are willing to admit. The inmate may nod, curse, cry, or remain completely calm. Whatever the reaction, it becomes part of the record. Everything is documented. From that moment forward, the death watch begins. In most states, the condemned is moved from their usual death row cell into a special observation unit, often called death watch or the death cell. This new cell is stripped down to essentials. There are no personal electronics. No bookshelves. No clutter. The bed is bolted, the toilet is stainless steel, and the lighting remains brighter than usual, a reminder that privacy is no longer part of their world. Guards assigned to death watch are handpicked. They are trained not only in security but in maintaining emotional neutrality. They cannot show hostility, but they also must avoid compassion that could complicate the final hours. Their job is to observe, document, and keep the prisoner safe. The state must guarantee that the inmate reaches the execution chamber alive, and that responsibility rests on the shoulders of these officers. They note every behavior, every meal, every visitor request, every hour of sleep or the lack of it. A clock hangs on the wall. It is never concealed. Time becomes both a companion and a weapon. Some inmates watch it obsessively, measuring the shrinking space in which their life remains. Others refuse to look. A few cover their eyes with blankets and attempt to sleep through what cannot be escaped. One of the most significant events in this early phase is the meeting with spiritual advisors. Every state allows inmates the right to religious counsel in the final hours, whether the inmate has been devout for decades or only turns to faith at the end. Rabbis, pastors, monks, imams, or prison-approved volunteers sit across from the condemned, sometimes offering scriptures, sometimes offering nothing more than silence. Some inmates request their advisor's presence during the execution itself, others desire solitude. Food becomes strangely symbolic. While the last meal is an idea widely circulated in pop culture, the truth is more procedural. Many states have abolished extravagant requests. Some limit choices to the standard prison menu for the day. Others permit one special meal capped by a modest budget. Regardless, the meal is recorded, prepared, delivered, and documented not for sentiment, but for consistency. Still, inmates often place intense psychological meaning onto it. Some ask for childhood dishes. Some refuse to eat. A few order nothing at all, declaring that they will not celebrate the state's plan. Meanwhile, lawyers work frantically. Even when chances are nearly zero, attorneys file emergency motions, PR pleas, or requests for pardons. Governors and boards of pardons and parole sometimes intervene at the last moment, though it is rare. Yet every phone call, every attempted appeal, every response from the courts adds another layer to the official timeline. Inside the prison compound, the execution chamber begins its preparation. The gurney is cleaned. The straps are checked. The lines for 4 drugs, whether for lethal injection or another method depending on the state, are tested, though never with actual chemicals. The witness room is arranged. The logs are printed. The procedure manuals are placed exactly where they must be. There is no improvisation when a person's life is being taken by the government. Every step must conform precisely to policy. In these opening hours, one thing becomes unmistakably clear: the process is not built to comfort anyone, not the inmate, not the victims' families, not even the staff who carry out the sentence. It is built for order, for control, for eliminating variables. The condemned person is still alive, but their world has narrowed into a perfectly measured countdown governed by pages of procedures, each created from decades of lawsuits, medical debates, and constitutional rulings. This is only the beginning. The real tension begins when the clock enters its final stretch, when the inmate must choose who gets to speak to them for the last time, who is allowed to witness their death, and what words, if any, they want carved into the silence that follows. In the final 12 hours before an execution, the emotional temperature inside a prison shifts in ways impossible to explain to anyone who has never walked a death row corridor. Staff move with slower, quieter purpose. Every officer knows the schedule, even if they are not directly involved. Even inmates in other units can sense the heaviness in the air. The entire institution takes on a tone that sits somewhere between ritual and resignation. For the condemned, this window of time becomes a psychological minefield. Every interaction, every handshake, every visitor, every denied request, every moment of silence carries the weight of finality. There is no such thing as a casual conversation anymore. Everything is either a farewell or a preparation for death. Visits become the centerpiece of these hours. Most states allow extended visitation on the final day, though all contact is strictly controlled. Some allow physical contact, hand-holding, brief hugs, while others restrict it to glass partitions and telephone receivers. These decisions are influenced by institutional policy, risk assessment, and sometimes the inmate's own disciplinary record. Families often arrive early in the morning. Many come exhausted, having traveled long distances or spent the previous night awake. Parents walk into death watch units with trembling hands. Siblings attempt to remain composed but rarely succeed. Wives, husbands, or long-term partners often break down even before the first word is spoken. And in some cases, no one comes at all. But when family does arrive, the interactions are unforgettable. The condemned person might reassure their loved ones instead of the other way around. Many spend the visit expressing regret not always for the crime, but for the years lost behind bars. Children, now adults, sometimes meet a parent for the first time in decades. Some bring photographs. Others bring stories. They try to talk about anything except what will happen in a matter of hours. These moments are quiet, but they are devastating. Correctional officers observe from a distance, not to intrude but because every second must be monitored and logged. Some officers have admitted privately that these visitations are the hardest part of their job. Not the execution. Not the procedure. But the goodbyes. Attorneys often visit as well. Even if all appeals have been exhausted, lawyers come to explain the final motions, describe any potential last-minute stays, and ensure the inmate understands their rights. They discuss the governor's authority. They review the formal clemency paperwork. They sometimes ask non-legal questions, such as settling property arrangements or clarifying who will handle funeral matters. These conversations are practical, but beneath the surface, they are a form of mourning. Some inmates maintain hope until the final minute. They believe in a possible stay, a sudden call from the governor, or a miracle from the courts. Others accept their fate long before the countdown. Still others fluctuate between the two mindsets minute by minute, trapped in a mental tug-of-war as time slips away. Spiritual advisors play a different role entirely. In the last hours, they become the closest thing to emotional refuge. They can speak about remorse, forgiveness, peace, and fear, subjects that neither officers nor attorneys are positioned to address. Advisors might pray, read scripture, chant, or simply sit with the inmate in silence. Some condemned individuals confess long-standing secrets. Others ask for a prayer to absolve their soul. A few confront the afterlife with defiance, refusing to accept any version of spiritual surrender. One significant decision occurs during this period: witness selection. The inmate is allowed to submit a list of approved witnesses who may attend the execution. Typically, this list includes immediate family members, friends, attorneys, and occasionally a spiritual advisor. Space is limited, and the list must be finalized well in advance. Prison officials verify identities, run background checks, and coordinate logistics. Every witness must follow strict rules: no cameras, no phones, no recording devices, no disruptive behavior. They must arrive early. They must wait in designated rooms. They cannot touch the inmate. And they must follow the escort officers silently. On the opposite side, the victims' families also submit a list of witnesses. These groups wait separately, ensuring that interactions do not occur. Their presence often carries a different emotional weight: anger, grief, closure, or in rare cases, forgiveness. Some victims' families choose not to attend at all, believing the execution will not bring healing. Others insist on being present, feeling it is the final piece of a long and painful journey. As the last conversations unfold, the prison's execution team is undergoing preparations of their own. These officers are not randomly selected. They volunteer. Each member is assigned a specific task, from escorting the inmate to the chamber, to securing the restraints, to monitoring heart rhythms, to communicating with the warden. The execution team's identities are often confidential, both to protect them and to reduce the emotional burden associated with the job. These officers must train extensively. They rehearse the procedure step by step. They practice movements within the chamber. They review medical protocols. Some states employ licensed medical professionals for certain aspects, while others rely on trained staff. Regardless, the preparation is precise and detached. It must be. Meanwhile, the inmate undergoes their own preparations. They may be allowed a shower, a chance to shave, clean clothes, or fresh undergarments. These details vary by state, but all share a common purpose: dignity in presentation and minimization of risk. Many inmates choose to groom themselves carefully, believing it is their final act of control. Others decline, insisting it does not matter. The final phone call is one of the most poignant moments of the entire day. The inmate is permitted one or more outgoing calls, depending on jurisdiction. Some speak to family members who could not visit. Others speak to lawyers, spiritual advisors, or long-lost loved ones. The calls are monitored, but staff keep their distance. No one interrupts unless absolutely necessary. In these conversations, the condemned may express apologies, regrets, gratitude, or simply the desire to say "I love you" one final time. Even inmates known for stoicism often break down during this call. The knowledge that it will be their last spoken connection to the outside world is overwhelming. As evening approaches, dinner is served, sometimes the notorious last meal, sometimes the standard menu. Regardless of the type, the meal is documented. Officers note whether the inmate eats normally, picks at the food, or refuses to eat at all. Food trays are collected silently. Once the final visits end, the inmate returns to their death watch cell. The door closes with a heavy, echoing clank, and the corridor once again becomes quiet. Officers resume their positions. A medical check may be conducted. Vital signs are recorded. The inmate may lie on the bed, pace the floor, or sit in stillness. At this point, time feels strange. It moves slowly but disappears quickly. Each minute is both unbearable and fleeting. Every sound, from footsteps to keys to distant doors, is amplified. The condemned person enters a psychological space known only to those who have faced imminent death. It is not simply fear. It is not simply acceptance. It is a mixture of reflection, regret, defiance, confusion, spiritual searching, and a profound awareness that their life is nearing an irreversible boundary. The conversations are over. The goodbyes are done. The paperwork is signed. And now, all that remains is the approach of midnight or whatever hour the warrant dictates. As the clock enters the final hours, typically between 6 p.m. and midnight, Depending on the warrant, the prison transitions into a mode that few civilians and even few correctional staff will ever witness. The shift is not loud. No alarms ring, no announcements echo through the walls. Instead, a quiet, methodical transformation takes place. Every hallway, every checkpoint, every staff member involved is now part of a carefully coordinated sequence known as the execution protocol. This protocol varies from state to state, but its purpose is identical everywhere: to ensure absolute control, prevent any risk of self-harm or escape, and carry out the sentence exactly as ordered. The hours ahead are structured to the minute. There is almost no improvisation. No hesitation. Everything is written, cross-checked, and recorded. The first major step is the activation of the Emergency Operations Command Center within the prison. This is a secure room where supervisors, administrators, medical personnel, and legal observers coordinate communications. Phones are monitored. Every officer assigned to the execution receives their final briefing. The warden reviews contingencies, confirms staff assignments, and signs off on the updated timeline. Every participant must physically acknowledge their role, no verbal agreements, no informal confirmations. The stakes are too high. The prison's perimeter tightens. Extra officers take posts at gates, towers, and sally ports. Vehicle traffic is screened more aggressively. Identification checks become stricter. This is not because a rescue attempt is expected, such events are unheard of, but because protocol demands total control. During an execution, even the slightest procedural deviation could trigger legal challenges later, so staff eliminate every variable. Inside the death watch cell, the inmate becomes aware of subtle changes. Footsteps increase. Radios crackle more frequently. Officers speak in shorter sentences. The air feels heavier. Some inmates begin to pace, tapping their fingers against the metal bed frame or pressing their palms against the glass window of the cell door. Others sit perfectly still, conserving emotional energy. A few pray, whisper, or write final notes. At this stage, suicide prevention becomes critical. This is one of the least discussed aspects of death row procedure. The state must prevent the inmate from taking their own life before the scheduled execution. This may sound paradoxical after all, the outcome is the same, but legally and procedurally, it matters. An execution is a state action. Anything else is a failure of control, a breach of custody, and a legal liability. Officers increase observation intervals. Some states implement continuous watch. Items that could be used for self-harm may be temporarily removed. And yet, despite this heightened supervision, staff speak to the inmate in calm voices, addressing them by name, avoiding hostility or emotional escalation. The goal is to maintain a stable environment, not create panic. Meanwhile, the execution chamber undergoes its final inspection. The gurney, typically constructed of reinforced metal and padded for restraint, is tested. Straps are checked for integrity. The insertion site is illuminated and inspected. Curtains are drawn back, then closed again, ensuring the mechanism functions smoothly. Witness rooms are prepared with chairs arranged in fixed rows. Drinking water is placed on small tables. A microphone is checked to ensure the warden's voice can be heard clearly when the final order is given. It is an eerily silent place before the witnesses arrive, sterile and still, like a hospital room stripped of comfort. On the other side of the prison, the media arrival process begins. Most states allow a handful of vetted journalists to witness the execution. Their names must have been cleared weeks earlier. They are escorted through metal detectors, given briefing packets, and instructed about what they can and cannot report. They cannot photograph the execution. They cannot speak during the procedure. They must remain unbiased and factual. Reporters are chosen not to dramatize the moment, but to ensure the public has documented proof that the state followed the law. Victims' families begin arriving as well. Their escort officers guide them through a separate entrance, offering tissues, water, and a quiet waiting room. Some families come with the hope that the execution brings closure. Others come with heavy reluctance, unsure whether witnessing another death will help or harm their grieving process. Some members pray quietly. Some cry. Some stare blankly at the floor, emotionally drained from the years or decades of court battles and appeal hearings. The inmates' approved witnesses, if any, are escorted separately. Their faces often show a different kind of anguish. They are about to watch someone they care about die. They sit in stiff plastic chairs, often holding hands or leaning against each other silently. Some bring final letters. Others rehearse last words they hope the inmate hears before the curtain closes. Back in the death watch cell, the inmate faces one of the most psychologically intense procedures of the entire day, the last inventory. Personal belongings are collected. Photographs, letters, books, commissary items, clothing, everything must be catalogued. Some items will be mailed to designated family members. Others must remain in custody. The inmate signs forms verifying the list. This step is clinical, but emotionally sharp. The inmate is now seeing the literal end of their physical footprint inside the institution. Next, the inmate is offered the opportunity to change into clean clothes. Most states prefer simple garments, often a clean shirt, loose pants, and slip-on shoes. Some inmates refuse, preferring to remain in the clothes they have worn all day. Others accept the fresh set as a final act of dignity. Officers stand by but turn slightly away during the clothing change, offering a small measure of privacy. The spiritual advisor, if approved, is allowed to return for final rites. The atmosphere during this encounter is unlike anything else. Advisors place hands gently on the inmate's back or clasp their hands through the bars. They recite prayers, read scripture, or simply listen. The inmate may confess final emotions: fear, regret, acceptance, anger. Advisors know their role is not to save the inmate from death but to accompany them through it. Inside the administrative wing, the warden reviews the do not resuscitate confirmation. During the execution process, once the procedure begins, the inmate cannot be revived. This must be spelled out in legal documents. The protocol is reviewed for the final time. Phone lines connecting the prison to the governor's office remain open. A stay could still occur even seconds before the procedure begins. Finally, the warden authorizes the extraction phase. At this moment, the inmate's fate is sealed unless a last-minute legal intervention arrives. Officers gather quietly outside the death watch cell. The extraction team consists of officers trained in calm, controlled movement. Their job is not to intimidate but to ensure the inmate is safely escorted without incident. The door opens. The inmate looks up. Some remain composed. Some begin crying. Some cannot speak at all. Officers apply soft restraints, not tight, not aggressive. Wrists. Ankles. Sometimes a waist belt. The inmate is told what will happen next, step by step. From here on, the timeline is precise. Every step is recorded. Every action is deliberate. The corridor between the death watch unit and the execution chamber is short, but for the inmate, it feels impossibly long. Officers walk slowly, giving the inmate time to breathe, time to steady themselves, time to face what comes next. At the end of that corridor stands the door to the execution chamber, the threshold between life and state-imposed death. The witnesses are already seated. The gurney is ready. The team waits in stillness. The next moments will unfold with clinical precision, but the emotional weight will be unlike anything experienced by anyone in the room. The final walk is one of the most carefully managed procedures in the entire execution process. It is not long in distance, sometimes just 30 or 40 feet, but its psychological gravity makes it feel like a descent through time. On one side of the corridor are white walls, often sterile and colorless. On the other side, steel doors, observation windows, and the silent presence of officers who have spent years learning how to maintain composure in moments like this. For the condemned person, every step is magnified. The sound of restraints brushing against fabric. The echo of boots on concrete. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Even the temperature of the corridor can feel sharper, colder, more intrusive. Sensory details, ignored on ordinary days, now define the entire experience. Death row inmates who have survived decades of isolation often describe this short walk as the moment their mind splits into two realities. One part observes silently, almost detached, watching everything as though through glass. The other part becomes hyper-aware, alive with fear, memory, and the overpowering awareness that time has run out. The escort team moves with slow precision. 2 officers walk at the inmates' sides, one just behind, one slightly ahead. Their hands do not grip violently, the restraints already ensure control. Their role is to accompany, not force. Some officers later admit that these are the longest steps they ever take in uniform. Along the way, protocol requires verbal confirmation checkpoints. Officers quietly announce location transitions into tiny recording devices worn on their vests. Beginning escort. Turning corner, east corridor. Approaching execution chamber door. Not for drama. Not for intimidation. But for accuracy, transparency, and legal compliance. Every syllable becomes permanent record. At the far end of the corridor stands the execution chamber, a room unlike any other inside the prison. Depending on the state, the door may be stainless steel, reinforced wood, or a thick composite designed to withstand tampering. It bears no ornament, no warning signs, no dramatic symbols. It is simply another door, yet everyone knows exactly what lies behind it. But before the inmate enters, one more step occurs, the warden's final confirmation. A small administrative alcove sits directly beside the chamber. This is where the warden waits, flanked by a deputy warden and the execution protocol officer. They hold a clipboard or tablet containing the official warrant. The inmate is brought to a stop. The room is silent. The warden steps forward and reads aloud a short, formal statement verifying the inmate's name, the case number, the sentence, the method of execution, the legal authority under which it is carried out. This reading is not emotional. It is slow, clear, rhythmic, almost ritualistic. Some inmates keep their eyes lowered. Others stare directly at the warden. A few begin to shake, praying under their breath or mouthing silent words to family members they cannot see but know are waiting behind the witness room glass. After the warden completes the verification, they ask the inmate if they have any final concerns, medical, procedural, or spiritual. This is not an invitation for debate, it is a chance to identify any immediate issues. Most inmates say nothing. Others offer short sentences like, "No. All right. I'm ready." Or sometimes, "Just get it over with." Only after this final exchange does the protocol continue. The door to the chamber opens. Witnesses sitting on the other side of the glass rarely see this part. They see only the moment the inmate is already inside, being secured to the gurney. But for those standing present, the sight is unforgettably stark. The room is bright. Unnaturally bright. Cold fluorescent lighting illuminates everything evenly, no shadows, no softness. The chamber resembles a medical suite stripped of comfort. Stainless steel fixtures line the walls. Cabinets contain medical supplies. The gurney sits at the center, angled slightly toward the viewing windows. Leather or nylon straps are laid neatly across the padded surface. The room is silent except for the shifting weight of officers and the low hum of ventilation. The inmate is guided to the gurney. Officers speak gently, almost whispering. "Step here. Lie back. Keep your head centered." There is no shouting. No aggression. The process is controlled, not confrontational. The inmate is positioned carefully, arms outstretched on angled boards, legs straight, head supported. Officers secure the restraints starting from the chest strap, then the waist, then the arms, then the legs. Each strap is tightened enough to prevent movement but not enough to cause pain. Everything is recorded. Some inmates tremble. Some close their eyes. Some turn their heads toward the witness room, hoping to see a familiar face before the curtains open. Meanwhile, in a side room connected to the chamber, usually through a small door or window, the medical team prepares the equipment. Depending on the state, a single drug or a series of drugs will be used. The exact substances vary due to national shortages, pharmaceutical restrictions, and legal battles. Regardless of the drugs chosen, the protocol requires redundant lines, backup supplies, and multiple staff members verifying dosage and labeling. One of the most controversial moments takes place now, for insertion. This is the step that has sparked lawsuits, medical debates, and national scrutiny. Inmates with a history of drug use, obesity, or illness may have compromised veins. The medical team must locate suitable sites, often the arms, sometimes the hands or feet. In rare cases, central lines or other invasive methods are used, though these procedures must comply with strict medical guidelines. If difficulties arise, the inmate may experience pain or discomfort. Some express fear or frustration. Others stay silent. The room remains calm, even during complications, as staff work methodically to establish the lines. Once the 4 is successfully placed, saline flows through the tubes to ensure no blockage. Officers and medical observers check the monitors. The warden steps closer. The protocol officer marks each step on the official report. At this stage, the inmate may be given the chance to speak with their spiritual advisor one last time if the state allows advisors to be present inside the chamber. Some states have changed policies following court rulings, now permitting advisors to touch the inmate, pray aloud, or hold their hand during the process. Others still restrict advisors to a distance. The room grows even quieter as the final preparations conclude. The inmate is now fully secured. The 4 lines are ready. The monitor for vital signs is active. The warden looks through the glass to confirm that all witnesses have taken their seats. The victims' families sit on one side. The inmates' witnesses on another. Journalists, those who were selected, sit in a third area. Their pens are ready, their eyes fixed on the chamber. Nothing moves. No one whispers. The silence is unlike anything else in the American justice system. And then the curtain separating the chamber from the witnesses begins to rise. The final moments are about to begin. As the curtain rises, the execution chamber transforms from a sterile, private medical-like room into a stage of absolute finality. The witnesses, who have waited in silence, now see the condemned person lying on the gurney, restrained, illuminated, and surrounded by the quiet machinery of state power. The fluorescent lights flatten the scene, leaving no shadows, only stark reality. For the inmate, this is one of the most emotionally overwhelming moments of the entire process. They are fully conscious. They see the rows of witnesses. They feel the straps across their chest and wrists. They sense the coldness of the 4 lines taped to their arms. And they know that every eye in the room is watching them during their last conscious minutes. The warden steps forward. With a measured voice that never rises or cracks, the warden announces the final stage of the procedure. This announcement is a formal reading, required by law, stating that the execution is proceeding and that the inmate will be given the opportunity to deliver a final statement. The phrase is often almost identical across states. Do you wish to make a final statement? It is one of the few moments in the entire process where the inmate has complete control. Some decline. Some speak briefly. Some speak for several minutes, if the protocol permits. Some whisper. Some shout. Some cry. Some say nothing at all. This moment carries enormous emotional weight. For victims' families, these final words can be a source of closure or frustration. Some want apologies. Some want answers to questions that have haunted them for decades. Others do not care what the inmate has to say, they believe no words could compensate for what was taken from them. For the inmate's family, this moment is unbearable. They see the person they love strapped down, surrounded by officials, moments from death. They listen for expressions of love, regret, or farewell. And they know it will be the last time they ever hear that voice. For journalists, the final statement becomes a historical record. They listen with professional detachment, yet even they cannot avoid the human gravity of the moment. And for the inmate, the statement is the last chance to define themselves. Many choose to address their families directly. I love you. Don't forget me. I'm sorry for putting you through this. Thank you for standing by me. Others speak to the victims' families. I am sorry for what I did. I hope this brings you peace. I can't undo the pain I caused. A few deny their guilt to the very end. Some warn others not to follow their path. Others quote religious scriptures, sing hymns, or recite prayers. And there are inmates who choose complete silence, no words, no movement, no expression. A final act of emotional withdrawal. Witnesses often describe these moments as surreal. The inmate's voice, amplified by the acoustics of the chamber, seems to float in the air. Time slows. No one shifts in their seat. Even the officers remain motionless. The final words might last 10 seconds. Or 2 minutes. Or be nothing more than a trembling whisper. Once finished, the inmate usually closes their eyes. Some turn their head to look at a specific person behind the glass. Others stare at the ceiling. A few keep their eyes open, fixed on the faces of the people who came to witness their death. The warden waits for complete silence. Then the procedure resumes. Standing beside the chamber, separated from the inmate by a wall and a small window, is the execution technician. Depending on the state, this person may be a medical professional, a trained officer, or an anonymous volunteer whose identity is legally protected. Their task is to administer the drugs exactly as outlined in the protocol. The warden raises their hand, the signal. The execution technician begins the lethal sequence. The first drug flows. In many states, it is a sedative or anesthetic designed to render the inmate unconscious. Its purpose is both practical and legal, to prevent pain and eliminate movement. Within 30 seconds, the inmate's chest rises and falls more slowly. Their eyelids may flutter. Their fingers twitch slightly against the restraints. Some attempt to speak again, but the words slur and fade. Then consciousness slips away. In states using a single drug method, usually a powerful barbiturate, the next stage begins almost immediately. In states using a multi-drug protocol, the second drug follows, a paralytic intended to stop muscle movement, including the diaphragm. This is one of the most controversial aspects of modern executions, a subject of intense legal and medical scrutiny. The witnesses see the body grow still. Hands relax. Jaw slackens. Eyes close, sometimes fully, sometimes partially, giving a haunting half-open appearance. The third drug, if used, stops the heart. The room remains silent except for the faint beeping of a heart monitor until it stops. Doctors are often brought in at this stage to declare death. Their role is not to participate in the execution but to provide the medical confirmation required by law. They check the pulse. They check the pupils. They verify cardiac silence. This part is swift, precise, clinical. The warden then announces time of death, hour, minute. These words are the official end of the process. Though everything that follows is administrative, the emotional shock radiates through the witness rooms. Some victims' family members cry, collapse, or hold on to each other. Others sit rigidly, processing what they have witnessed. Some express relief. Some express sorrow. Many express nothing at all. The inmates' family members often break down completely, sobbing, leaning on officers for support, or covering their faces as they attempt to leave the facility. Journalists are escorted to a briefing area to record their accounts. They note details such as the inmate's final statement, the demeanor during the procedure, any complications, the official time of death. Their reports will become part of the public record, often the only documentation the outside world sees. Back inside the chamber, staff begin what is known as the post-execution procedure. The 4 lines are removed. The body is unstrapped. The room is sanitized. All equipment is logged. The body is transported to a medical examiner or to a funeral home, depending on the inmate's final arrangements. Once the body leaves the prison, the execution chamber goes silent again. The lights stay on. The gurney remains in place. But the room feels different, emptier. For the staff who participated, this is often the quietest, heaviest moment of all. Officers file out without speaking. Some go home in silence. Others sit in their cars for long minutes before starting the engine. A few seek counseling, though many never do, carrying the emotional burden privately. The prison returns to routine, but the echo of the execution lingers for hours, sometimes days. For the inmate, the process is over. For their family, grief begins. For the victims' families, the long chapter of trials and appeals finally closes. For the officers, another execution is completed, and the protocols return to standby. But behind the walls of the death chamber, the state has left an imprint that will remain for all who witnessed it. The last hours of a condemned prisoner reveal more about the system than they do about the individual. In the quiet hum of fluorescent lights, in the shuffle of officers' boots down narrow corridors, in the whispered prayers and final breaths, there lies the truth of capital punishment in America. As the clock strikes midnight and another execution is filed away into the state's records, the world outside moves on. Cars still pass along highways. Restaurants still close for the night. Families switch off their living room lights. Yet inside the prison, something irreversible has happened, something permanent, deliberate, and carried out in the name of justice. The execution chamber is emptied. The 4 lines are coiled back into drawers. A gurney is wiped clean, though its history can never be fully erased. Officers step outside to smoke in silence. Some do it to calm their nerves. Others do it because they cannot bear to go straight home. They carry the weight of a responsibility that most citizens never want to imagine. The warden signs paperwork confirming that the state has done what the state said it would do. He does not celebrate. He does not smile. Even after years of walking this path, the finality of an execution lingers longer than protocol ever admits. The victim's family exits through a secure hallway. Some feel closure. Some feel emptiness. Some feel nothing at all. Grief is not uniform, and executions do not promise emotional symmetry. In a different building, the prisoner's body is released to the coroner. State law dictates where it goes next, who can claim it, and how it must be handled if no one comes forward. Many inmates leave prison the same way they lived within its walls, quietly, with no one waiting on the other side. But the questions remain. Questions that won't fit in a file folder. Questions no policy revision can fully address. Questions that will outlive every death warrant ever signed. Did justice win tonight? Or did we simply replay a cycle older than the prison itself? What truly happens in the final hours on death row is more than procedure. More than law. More than punishment. It is a collision of morality, duty, trauma, and humanity compressed into a countdown that ends in silence. And long after the witnesses go home, long after the gurney is locked behind steel doors, long after the news cycle moves on, the echoes of that final hour continue to shape the debate. A debate that will not die. A debate with no easy answers. A debate we must keep having. Because behind every execution, whether you support or oppose the practice, there is a human story that deserves to be understood, not buried. If you've watched until the very end, thank you for staying with this journey. Inside these walls, truth is rarely simple. But it's always necessary.